Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
Welcome to another edition of Cal's Corner Radio here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Cal Korff, and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. As you know, folks, in every episode we cover everything, so to speak, from politics to the paranormal. This time we're going to focus pretty much exclusively on politics because whether you're into politics or not, whether you live in a cave or not, a lot's going on. And yes, whether you like it or not, or care or not, it can and likely is going to affect you. All right, let's get into it. First of all, there's this effort to impeach President Donald Trump. That is not new. They were trying to impeach him before he even swore on the Bible to take the oath to become president. You can actually Google some of those news articles about that. It's kind of bizarre, but they were trying to get him before he was even president. Anyway, now it looks like this is kind of a Well, it looks like things need to change. Otherwise, he's history, because you can't just sit there and say, I'm not going to cooperate. In fact, if I were Trump, I'd say, hey, I'm going to open my kimono, search it all you want. Let's get this over with, because you have the burden of proof. I'm innocent until proven guilty by statute, by law. I'm also president of the United States. That does give me some leeway, but let's go for it. Come on. Let's go. In fact, let's broadcast all your evidence against me live. Show me what you got. Take your best shot. That's what I would do, but he's not doing that. Instead, it's, well, we're just not going to cooperate. We're going to stall. That is not how you solve this. In fact, you can end up in contempt, and he should be held in contempt. You can't just sit there and say no, not when there are processes to cut to the chase. And in this case, even though all sides like to play politics with it, both sides must cut to the chase. Now, an event happened today which is very interesting to Ukrainians who supposedly are innocent, working with the supposedly innocent Rudy Giuliani. Yeah, right. Well, they were busted and arrested at Dulles Airport trying to leave the United States, shock, with a one-way ticket to Germany, surprise. Then, of course, they would disappear into Eastern Europe. Now, this is rather interesting because with the Ukrainians in there, and you can search on this too, in my reporting over the years for Daily World and Daily Post newspapers, and I've talked about it here on this show, the key to understanding the whole Russian Trump thing, whatever there is to understand, has always been through the Ukraine. It's kind of obvious. A lot of people in the news who have covered the Trump-Ukrainian stuff even now, and of course it was a focus on Russia. Ukraine is kind of a Johnny-come-lately area of coverage because the last major coverage of it was when the revolution happened that threw out Putin's crony. And we've talked about that in past shows. I've reported on it. I've written full-page specials on it. And, of course, once the people were thrown out of power and there was this revolution, what happened was records were found indicting people like Paul Manafort. And, of course, the FBI and CIA and other intelligence agencies always knew about Manafort and what he was doing. But for whatever reasons, you'd have to ask them, they couldn't be bothered to do much about it. They kind of waited until the whole stuff with Trump reached a head. And, again, there's something really suspicious about that needs to be probed, and I don't know how it's going to be sorted out because I know in my own analysis with the data that I've had access to, which is part of a book I've been writing on that has a working title of In Russia's Orbit, Why the Intelligence Community Spied on Trump and Others. It talks about why all this happened because I was surprised to find out that essentially Mueller, Comey, even Loretta Lynch, certainly Rudy Giuliani, he got his big break by busting and prosecuting the Russian mafia. All of these guys know where all the proverbial bodies are buried. They all have dirt on each other. They all know what the dirt is. And there's all these secret legal deals that have been made to kind of keep a lot of this stuff from coming out in the public. And you might say, well, that sounds like a bunch of conspiratorial nonsense because why would the Democrats help the Republicans? Why would Mueller help Trump? You know, look at all this investigation they had to do. Well, it really was convoluted before that because one must remember, and again, I've written and reported on this a lot. It's you can easily find corroborative evidence out there. In fact, don't take my word for it. Please check all this on your own. Feel free to do your research, dive in. Basically, again, the U.S. started monitoring and spying on Trump when he was invited by the Kremlin to set up a Trump hotel in Moscow. They actually were going to go in as a partner with him. And this is before the USSR collapsed. They even, paid for the trip. Okay, fine. It's been done before. Doesn't mean there's collusion. In fact, I got news for you, sunshines out there. The moment you make any serious money, even when you don't make serious money, the government's always looking at you anyway. That's what they do. They love doing it, and they spend a lot of money making sure they can do it, both legally and, yes, illegally. And Canada's a partner in that. We've talked about that before. There's a sharing agreement called the Big Five, Five Eyes, and Canada is part of that. One big happy family, at least the five. And Israel's the unofficial sixth member of the Five Eyes Agreement for sharing intelligence. So they've had Trump on the radar for a long time. And it was Finnish intelligence, Polish intelligence, Lithuanian intelligence. There's other very competent intelligence agencies out there who reported people like Paul Manafort to the CIA. And then, of course, everyone got interested in it. And if you look at the data that was released and leaked by Edward Snowden, documenting the surveillance capabilities, and this is not all the data that's out there. Their capabilities are even more, let's say, powerful than what has been leaked. You better believe they have the bottom line on all these people. In fact, the government has both been alert and asleep at the wheel on the issue, and there's no excuse for it. For example, the government has known for decades that money laundering and illegal diamond trafficking and gold trafficking were taking place on at least 2 floors in Trump Tower. This is a fact. You can actually look at the prosecutorial, the documents by prosecutors on this. They exist. I've read them. I have them in my files. In fact, Ukrainians and Russians and Kazakhstanis, they were buying entire floors, running their operations. There was a guy who was assassinated a couple of blocks away who apparently ran afoul. He was laundering stuff with the Russian mafia and, of course, the Colombian mafia. And he was assassinated, shot in the back with a .45 near there. And it's a matter of, again, public law enforcement prosecutorial record. The New Jersey Mafia, where they added illegal fuel taxes. Again, form of money laundering with the Russian Mafia. Again, no surprise there. And again, check on this name, Felix Sater, Felix, last name Sater. Very key witness. He's been literally a spy or double agent for the U.S. He, of course, was a partner with Trump when he got in problems years ago and cut a deal, didn't spend a single day in jail, and got off scot-free in exchange for turning evidence and providing eventually the mobile phone numbers of people connected to Osama bin Laden. That helped the CIA track him down and kill him eventually. Okay, so he deserves kudos for that. He also kept Stinger missiles out of the hands of the Taliban. Again, thanks very much. So, of course, he turned evidence, and then, of course, he introduced Trump to some Russians and people connected with Trump. And, of course, he isn't being put in prison because, again, he can kind of come and go and do what he wants because he's of value to the U.S. government. And Loretta Lynch renewed the secret agreement they have with him on the last day that it was due to expire. She actually got a phone call from another judge who told her to wake up, and that if she didn't sign the papers by noon, the deal was going to expire, and a whole bunch of data the U.S. government does not want out about the deal with Sater, why he was allowed to legally rip off investors for overvalued properties in a scheme with Donald Trump. There's no question this happened. There was a deal cut. It is sealed. One day it'll be declassified. But probably after all of those who were involved in cutting this sweetheart thing, for whatever reason, let's give them the credit and say, well, maybe it's worth the price of letting a criminal go and still act with impunity. I don't know. Again, we'd have to see the uncensored documents. But all this happened. And I was shocked to find out that, hey, since everybody knows where all the bodies are buried, so to speak, instead of spending millions of dollars and years and, thousands of hours of wasted time, why doesn't everybody get in a big room? How about the U.S. Congress? Broadcast it live and go for it. Share what everybody knows. Let it all out, freeform. And then, you get a lot of focus when you do that, and you get to a lot of truth, and the American people in the world get to see it and talk about transparency. Boy, I can't think of anything more transparent than that. But no, they'd rather have their committees and their investigators and hire their private whatevers and their consultants. And then, of course, that jacks the price up deliberately. Then the machinery kicks in. And then, of course, the special prosecutors or the lawyers, they won't look at certain things, even though they're actually kind of connected if you dig down deep enough. It's really disgraceful, folks. I am all for the fact that there is a possibility now that whatever Biden's son was doing in Ukraine, we may know. Now, I admit that, unfortunately it takes something like this to bring that out, but I have a problem when relatives, especially direct blood relatives like sons and daughters, even cousins, uncles, whatever, they start profiting because someone they know, especially a relative, is in a key position in government, and that is what happened. You can't tell me with a straight face that Biden's son got the job just because he was the most qualified person on the planet to get it and beat all the other candidates silly. No, he got it because his father, his daddy, was vice president. That's the truth. Any other claim is BS, okay? Let's be blunt about it. But it was a form of legal corruption, wasn't it? That is the problem. Legal corruption. Corruption, by definition, is not supposed to be legal. Now, we'll come back after this break.
It's hard to listen to the news without realizing we're living in volatile, unprecedented times. Yet never has there been such an opportunity to transform the human condition. As old structures fail, where can we find the guidance to co-create a better way? Find Your Path Home is an ever-evolving, leading-edge information, education, and healing resource center designed to support and guide you on your path to unity and enlightenment. Based on sound principles employed by shamans worldwide, we provide techniques that can support you through the current transitions, offering online shamanic classes, international long-distance shamanic healing sessions, complimentary Mission Evolution radio episodes and Stairway to Heaven TV vignettes, seminars, retreats, and much more. All of this can be found on findyourpathhome.com.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me. simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Path Home Shamanic Art School proudly presents the Gathering of Shaman 2019 Fall Retreat, Manifestation Samhain. Join me, certified shamanic instructor Gwilda Wiyaka, in the magnificent Colorado Mountains this November 2nd and 3rd for a life-changing event. Participate in unique teachings and ceremonies that'll put the power and magic of shamanic manifestation into your hands. Sit in circle with like-minded individuals, sharing group energy and the power it generates. Classes will be held in a facility next to the beautiful, majestic Arkansas River, further empowering the experience. Space is limited, so reserve your spot today. For more information, visit findyourpathhome.com or email touchin@findyourpathhome.com.
Welcome back to the second segment here on Cal's Corner Radio on the X Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Cal Korff, and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. Now, we were talking about before the break the issue of corruption. Again, as a human being, especially an American, yes, I am that, I really have a problem with the idea that a politician, you know, he has his job or her job, fine. They're elected fairly squarely. That's okay. Even if you agree or disagree with them, whatever. Point is, they're in office legally by the system, voted in by the majority of the people. Fine. And then all of a sudden their relatives or themselves become rich. Now, how does that magically happen? Now, first of all, you must look at the U.S. Congress to really figure this out here, because this is something they're not going to tell you unless you press them, and even then they'll come up with their excuses and try to avoid the subject because it indicts them. What I'm talking about is this. Most of the people in Congress today in the U.S., they're rich. They're not the average person, okay? They're rich. So they don't live in, let's call it the real world, the majority of what most people live in. And, of course, it gets worse when you leave the country because, again, life standards outside the U.S. are both above and below what America has. So, to make a long story short, they're rich people. And studies have shown that about 90% of the laws that they pass are in line with corporate interests, but not your interests. In other words, if you do a study, and anybody can do this, mapping the campaign promises, what they supposedly stand for, why it is that they're running in the first place versus what they deliver in the form of laws that get passed. Now, I'm not talking about laws that they may back, but later on the Senate doesn't approve, so it's not really their fault. Let's back it up to a more pure sense here, where we're talking about what they're able to get successfully done. You find out that about only 10% of what they're doing matches why they're there. So that's a 90% dysfunctional element there. And then even the progressive AOC, you know, Cortez, she complains that at least half the time of her day are spent 4.5 hours to 5 hours a day with lobbyists. And she's supposedly anti-lobbyist against big business, right? Free everything, right? But yet she complains, and she's right to complain about this, that about half of her time is wasted, quote unquote, dealing with lobbyists. Now you can imagine how much time is spent from Trump's guys and nice people like Nancy Pelosi, who's, of course, pure and driven and white as the snow, right? She's just the epitome of transparency, accountability, and honesty in politics. Well, no, because again, you have a pattern here which is very interesting. Look at these big projects, where billions or hundreds of millions or even tens of millions of dollars are spent in California regarding, especially mass transit. Isn't it just amazing that Pelosi's husband, or Barbara Boxer's husband, managed to get these big contracts? I mean, they're the only people qualified on the whole planet to get these works, to have your tax dollars pay their companies money so that they can build whatever for you that you're paying for. They're the only people who can get this done. And that's the only reason that these husbands of these very powerful senators and speakers of the House get the business, because they're the only ones qualified to get it, right? Now, if you believe that, I can't help you. So why do we allow that system to continue? Because we keep voting in these people who are doing these things, and then we complain when they do it. So whose fault is it ultimately? It is your fault when you vote for these people. And then I hear people say, well, who else do I vote for? I don't know. That's up to you. But guess, sometimes if you vote for anybody but the person you're going to complain about, that could be an improvement, okay? I understand why in some towns and in some elections they vote for a dead person or even a dog to be mayor. It's kind of a symbolic protester to say, hey, a dog would do a better job than you are going to do, so I'm going to vote for the dog. That's actually quite logical. If a dog's going to do a better job, put him in the presidency. I don't care. So we have this absolute track record where the ability to be corrupt as a nation at the level of politics, and even when you're running bureaucracies, you're city official, you're not, let's say, a career politician, but you're just some, important paper pusher. The ability to be corrupt is rampant, and it's reached a point where it's, not sustainable. Corruption shouldn't be sustainable at all. But let's be honest, a system that is done right can absorb the damage of corruption up to a point, but then it reaches a point of no return. And one thing that I noticed living outside the United States, because I was dealing with inspector generals and all kinds of different subjects, and specifically on issues with a certain three-letter agency called CIA, I found out that the inspector generals were not doing the jobs that they're supposed to do. And if the inspector generals, to use an analogy, if the referees can't make the right calls in the football game, you might as well not play the game at all, because it's not going to be honest. So when the inspector generals don't do their job and they get nailed in a report by an inspector general on that very issue, by an inspector general looking at the inspector general saying you're not doing your job and we got to fix that process, it has gone downhill from there. Now, I must say there have been some improvements, absolutely. And there's going to be a test coming up soon regarding, well, let's just say it's an unusual subject. It has three letters in it: UFOs, UFO, or UAP, or nicknamed Tic Tacs. We're going to see what the inspector generals do of some entities regarding those subjects soon, and that will be clear on October 9th when I talk about it in public more. Stay tuned. All right, so back to the issue of Biden and his son, Pelosi and Boxer and their husbands and their sons. They're all making money because daddy and mommy, or uncle and auntie, or cousin and whatever, have the political connections. And yet they all pretend like they're innocent. Well, it's legal. I never talked, to my son about his business in Ukraine. I just posed for photographs and never said anything. Come on, folks. They had to talk about it. And even if they didn't, who cares? That's not the issue. The issue is, why does the son of a vice president just happen to get a $50,000 a month job because he's such a genius in the gas business. My God, he was born to be a natural gas man. No, he has no experience in it at all. Okay, so let's give him $50,000. Gee, that's a nice job if you can get it. I've got no experience in it, and I'll do it for half the price. So, the whole thing just stinks. And it's legal, and that's the problem. And then you have Trump, who doesn't really care about, let's say, the legal way to do things, okay? He just doesn't care. And he's like, yeah, okay, I did this, and, that wasn't my intent, but of course I said the words. Well, his story is falling apart. In fact, when I found out earlier today about the arrest of the 2 Ukrainians, the first thing I thought of was what happened when the Watergate burglars were busted breaking in and inside the Democratic headquarters. They're nailed, the plumbers. Well, maybe these were plumbers for Trump. They certainly were for Giuliani. He has lunch with them and then they go to the airport with a one-way ticket, and they're already going to be witnesses. Yeah, they were going to come back after going to the Oktoberfest? I doubt it. Anyway, so this is really bad. And of course, Trump can say, well, I didn't have any knowledge of it. The campaign didn't have any knowledge of it. We've heard that before. And he can say, well, that's Rudy doing his thing. And now we have Trey Gowdy in there. And that's rather interesting because Trump has hired him to be his defense lawyer. So now Trey Gowdy has to eat his own words. He's been called out of retirement. He's in private practice. He's now an advisor, Trump's main prosecutorial lawyer as far as defending him. Now, Trey Gowdy was raging against ignoring subpoenas. Remember, over Benghazi? Well, is he going to rage against Trump ignoring subpoenas? Is he going to hold Trump to the same standard that he was trying to hold Hillary Clinton and others to? He's a former prosecutor. Okay, he's got to stick to that standard, even if his client is the president of the United States. Now, I'll tell you the one thing that I love about his involvement, Trey Gowdy, is Trey Gowdy does not mince words. Even when he's wrong, he doesn't, talk around the subject. That's very refreshing, because when I used to hear Obama speak, I wanted to just tear my hair out the way he just couldn't say yes to a yes or no question. Biden has that problem too. But, Biden, could screw up the word I. He's that talented. Anyway, so back to the issue of Trey Gowdy. He can cut to the chase with the Democrats and shred them where they need to be shredded and exposed and outed, and cut to the chase in that sense. That's exciting. He's the guy to do it. Where he's going to have his hands full, and he better fly straight, is if Donald Trump is really guilty or any of his minions. We already know, based on the number of people in jail right now around Trump, that yes, he not only has corruption, but he's surrounded by people who have decided to use that privilege and access to the president to, of course, get a lot of money and enrich themselves. Look at the amount of money he has raised from people who don't really love him, let's be honest, for his reelection campaign. It doesn't have a money problem. It's not run on a shoestring budget this time, except the shoestrings, if you want to use that analogy, they're made of gold laces this time. He's got all the cash he needs. He doesn't have to spend his own money. Boy, he's going to have to do something different with his taxes now, because he won't have a tax write-off the same way as versus when it was his own money. All right, we'll be back after this commercial break for part 3, and we'll continue this.
Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomena, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
Welcome back to the third segment here on Cal's Corner Radio on the X Zone Broadcast Network. Once again, my name is Cal Korff, and I'm your host. Rob McConnell is the executive producer. All right, let's get back to it real quickly, wind up the issue of impeachment in Ukraine, and then we'll switch to a very different subject. Once again, the issue is now, we talked about Trey Gowdy being involved. The dynamic automatically means that, at least some part of this should move and cut to the chase, whatever that chase is. I have no idea what the truth is going to be on this. I didn't know, for example, the two Ukrainians were going to leave on a one-way ticket, or try to at least. Who knew? Obviously they did. Who knows if Giuliani knew? We don't know. We're going to find out. So what will happen is this event escalates things. Gowdy's involvement escalates things. And then Nancy Pelosi now that the hot potato's back on her hands, she has to decide whether there's going to be a formal vote or not. So that'll be interesting to see what happens. I look forward to it regardless. I'm all for transparency, accountability. I don't really care who's guilty or not. I just want whoever is guilty to be punished accordingly. And please give them the maximum. Throw the book at them. Make a public example. Because I believe, even in the death penalty, for certain kinds of corruption. There was a story in communist China, and I'm not a fan of that kind of government, but here was a guy who was busted with millions of dollars in gold and cash in his house. And this photo was amazing, this video. It showed all these little gold ingots melted down in 1 gram or 1 ounce increments and different weights and stuff. It's just millions of dollars hidden there. And of course, he's now probably going to be executed for that kind of corruption. And he was a political leader. He was, I think, a mayor. And of course, he was corrupt. And I think because I've seen this in my travels to 27 different countries, there's corruption where you might, take some part of some budget or something, or award a contract to your relative gives you a kickback, or you just do it because you love your relative, or you don't care and you want him to get money, whatever your excuse is to break the law, it's not right. But then there's other things where you do something and it ends up killing a lot of people, or it deprives some village of water or vital services. I've seen that in India, where it actually gets people killed. I've even seen people killed by mosquito bites because the city officials refused to spray on a timely manner. So when I hear those stories, or I see it, and there's a city official who didn't order a spraying to be done, so people died of mosquito bites, in my opinion, whether you agree with me or not, that same official should be bit by the same mosquitoes and let nature take care of him. If he dies of malaria or dengue, fine. If he doesn't, well, okay, but at least he got to experience. And then, of course, he needs to be put in prison if he survives. In fact, I'd keep him in prison even after he got bit. I just believe in the death penalty when certain crimes reach a certain threshold. Because if you don't have what we call the ultimate punishment, then where do you have parameters or boundaries for morality? You don't have them. You lose them. For example, this is what Trump has done now. And yes, it's all on Trump. It is entirely his fault. He is being universally condemned for what I'm about to tell you. And it is the right thing to do. I hope that condemnation continues. What he has done now, because he's not a good commander-in-chief, let's be blunt, who would expect him to be? He has no experience. Remember, he had bone spurs, so his military career was cut short. Anyway, he betrays our most staunchest ally in the Middle Eastern part of Syria. They're called the Kurds, and they live in northern eastern Iraq. Trump is not the first American president to betray the Kurds. Let's be clear. I'll get into that in a moment. But he's just the latest, and he was supposed to be different. Because what happened was he cut a deal with the Kurds to go after and exterminate the Islamic State terrorist group. In exchange for that, they were supposed to be protected from Turkey wiping them out. So what does Trump do after 15 to 17,000 ISIS terrorists are locked up in prisons and ISIS is essentially defeated? You know, they've scattered. The leader has not been found. He's still alive. They thought they killed him, I think, last year, but turns out it wasn't true. Well, they haven't been defeated in a real they can never rise sense again. They will rise up because the very nature of terrorism is that it is a form of asymmetric warfare. That means one guy with a suicide vest can ruin your day. It doesn't take an army. It may take an army to find the guy to keep him from doing it, but it's asymmetrical warfare. Very different than a bunch of guys charging a hill from different directions that represent different armies. It's not a dogfight in the air between two airplanes. So what happens is we were supposed to protect the Kurds after the Islamic State was defeated. But no, instead Trump decides in his, infinite wisdom, that's basically his own words, and he doesn't have infinite wisdom. In fact, based on what he says sometimes, one wonders if he has any wisdom, and that especially applies to this issue, and it's very serious. What he did is he abandoned the Kurds. He took out U.S. Special Forces who were fighting alongside them, helping them, training them, doing the heavy lifting and some very specialized things that they do, and they're the best to do it, not the Kurds. And what he does is he withdraws them, and he leaves the Kurds at the mercy of the Turks, which means they're going to be killed. The reason they're going to be killed is because the Turks view the Kurds as terrorists. Why are they terrorists? Are they really terrorists? Why would we help terrorists when Turkey is a buddy of ours, an ally, a fellow member of NATO? Well, you see, Turkey, the reason Turkey is the size it is today as a nation is because it basically stole the land of neighboring countries around it, like Armenia. Go back and look at a map that shows the territory of Armenia. Going back over the last couple hundred years, you will see a very sad pattern. It has constantly shrunk to its modern borders today because Turkey committed the first genocide in the 1900s before Hitler did commit the second one in the Holocaust in World War II. They committed the first genocide against Armenians, took most of their land, and that today is Turkey. They were, again, the Ottoman Empire used to be there before there was Turkey. And they were radical Islamic militants. They murdered countless people. And thank God they were defeated by the West with their modern tanks and their airplanes and their bombs in World War I, because Ottoman Turkey stupidly sided with Imperial Germany, and they lost. And I don't feel sorry for them. And Turkey ever since then, let's be blunt, has been upset that they're no longer the global empire they used to be. They want to be part of the European Union. That is how ambitious they are. And I'm using a euphemism there, because what they're really wanting to do is bring Islam, radical Islam, into the European Union. Erdogan, its elected dictator, and I've done a lot of articles on him to the point where I can't go to Turkey now, and I wear that with a badge of honor. He has already threatened to unleash 2.5 to 3.5 million refugees into Europe again. You see, what the West does is they bribe this guy to keep these people essentially locked up on his territory or Syrian territory. And because he doesn't want the Kurds to have their own little area that they can be autonomous, they're not Turkish, they're Kurdish. Iraq itself is a phony, contrived country invented by a British woman. She happens to be female. I'm saying that for the record so nobody in the Me Too generation gets upset. I'm not being sexist here. So she takes what are basically three different tribes and cultures, the Kurds, the Sunnis, the Shias, and she says, why don't you just all live in peace? We'll just call yourself Iraq. And of course, they've been killing each other ever since because they were not natural allies. Sunnis are very different from Shia Muslims, especially when Iran, their neighbor, is the Shia capital of the world. Saudi Arabia, Saudi Wahhabia, is the Sunni capital of the world. They don't get along. They've been killing each other for 1,400 years. The British knew that. They didn't care. The same stupid approach as to when they partitioned India into Pakistan. Well, India at one point used to cover from the Afghan border today all the way down to what's India today. And there was no Pakistan. It was just all India. But no, the British had other ideas, and they just arbitrarily did whatever. And millions of people killed each other trying to sort it out. And it's still a mess today. Thank you, Great Britain. So this type of stupidity is the history of this area. And here comes Trump. He says, okay, let's do this deal. And ISIS is, bombed and defeated, quote unquote. But, it's even not then that simple. Look at Putin and Russia. If they hadn't jumped in, and they jumped in, they weren't invited. They bombed the you-know-what out of everybody. And that's how ISIS was really defeated. Yes, the U.S. played a good key role, got more serious after Obama was out of office. But Trump cannot say he did it. No. If Russia hadn't been there, not caring about human rights and bombing and, allowing Syria to use chemical weapons while saying it was, framing Assad, then ISIS would still be more entrenched today than they are now. So Russia deserves credit for doing most of the barbaric heavy lifting that the U.S. would not do. And that is a fact. But of course, Trump won't talk about that. But what he has done now is he's pulled out forces, and the Turks have shelled prisons that contain ISIS terrorists, and now they're escaping. And they did it deliberately. And we'll talk about that after the commercial break. We'll be back.
If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide. They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Elie Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, The 70-Year Cover-Up Exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now to receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Memorable dynamic presentations are a not-so-secret weapon in the business world. Do you have a powerful message that must be shared, but you haven't found a way to deliver that message? Do you want to be known as a top public speaker who gets amazing results? Are you ready to create and deliver your powerful message? Thomas Hives can help you create and deliver your speech to get the results you desire. Visit iconquality.com.
Welcome to the fourth and final segment here on Cal's Corner Radio Show on the X Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Cal Korff. I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. And we're talking about Syria, the Kurds. Let's back up a moment, because when I say that Trump has betrayed them, and he has, okay, we'll come back to that in a moment. I need to give you a little bit of background here, because although he has betrayed them, he's not the first American president to do it. He's probably not going to be the last, unless our foreign policy towards the Kurds, and especially Turkey,
Has the fear of public
fundamentally
speaking stalled your
changes.
business or personal
Now,
life?
first of all,
what
we
would
must
you
remember
give to
that
develop
back
and maintain
when
supreme
Reagan
confidence?
was
Have an
president,
invaluable
so this is the
private program
1980s.
to always
He sent a
perform at your
special
best.
envoy by the
Imagine
name
how
of
you would
Donald
feel.
Rumsfeld
You can
to
have
Iraq
all
to
that
meet
and
a
so
dictator
much more
named
today
Saddam
with
Hussein.
Thomas Hyde's life-changing
He
course
gave
called Number One Fear
Saddam, during that
Unleashed.
visit, a
Visit
wonderful gift,
numberonefear.com
anthrax.
and be
They gave him
liberated
live
from your
anthrax
fear of public
cultures.
speaking.
And the reason he gave them to Iraq, wink wink, was to do scientific medical research. They would never dare be weaponized. Saddam would never do that. Saddam was a nice guy. That's how he became the dictator of Iraq. So Rumsfeld says it's all good, poses with Saddam, with, it's on video. You can look at it if you bother. Everything's fine. And then what happens? Well, what happens is Saddam weaponizes them. Wow, we're shocked. And then he starts using them against Iran. And we're just shocked that, he invades Iran because, we had no idea. The Iraqi troops were just, amassed on the border because they wanted the exercise. It is incredible, folks. We knew what they were doing. And I have actually read formerly classified memos from the U.S. government which basically say this, that the U.S. government did not mind at all that Iraqis, that Saddam Hussein, would invade Iran, get rid of the radical Ayatollah Khomeini, and then we would put in there another puppet like the Shah, only this time we tweak him, it wouldn't be a woman, of course, so that, maybe he might stay in power this time. That's how stupid we were. We didn't even have the original idea to put the Shah in power in Iran, and I think that dynamic is wrong in itself. We don't have the right to put people in power in other countries. We can help fight for freedom and democracy and legitimate causes like that when people are being oppressed and whatever. There are circumstances where you do that, like World War II. You don't let Hitler take over Europe. You defeat him. You wipe him out. You exterminate him. That's how you get rid of people who start world wars. You eliminate them. All right, so what are we doing with Iraq and Iran? Well, we don't mind if they're killing Iranians because we don't like the radical mullahs. We don't like Khomeini. We understand that, fine. But then we're going to replace him with Shah version 2.0? Well, we didn't learn anything. And it was the British who came up with the idea, by the way, for the record, the lovely, peaceful, passive British, the ones who used to be, the biggest empire in the world until, America beat them. Anyway, what happened was they said, yeah, let's put someone in Iran. We can control it. And we'll fake data and lie to Eisenhower and hype the threat of communism in the Soviet Union taking it over. And the Dulles brothers faked this data. And, of course, they worked with Kermit Roosevelt, who was the nephew of, yes, President Roosevelt. And they managed to get this done. In fact, Allen Dulles said, wow, we can actually overthrow countries really cheaply for only a few $1 million. Look at Iran. This is a business model of how America can spread its influence. And again, that is wrong. I don't care which country does it. It's America this time. So no wonder the rise of Ayatollah Khomeini happened. It was predictable. It was backlash. This is what happened when you put a bastard in power that the people don't want. Eventually they rise up and get rid of him. And then you may not like what they replace him with. It could be worse. But it's been known to happen in history. People don't necessarily think 2 steps ahead when they're involved in revolutions. They're usually caught up in the moment. All right, so what happened? Like Ecuador, it's going on right now. Revolution. Well, that's not dominating CNN's news headlines, is it? Nah, the Trump impeachment is. So here's what we did. And what happened was the Iran war and with Iraq raged on for, I think it was about 8 years. About 1 million people were killed. And we were happy. We wanted many times more Muslims to kill each other. We didn't care. And then we started arming both sides. That was what the Iran-Contra scandal was about. And, of course, we said we were shocked that that happened. No, we weren't. You don't arm both sides accidentally. So we're playing both sides. We didn't tell Saddam, and he's mad at us. But, of course, he has no choice but to get weapons from us because Russia is cutting off his weapons because he's not going to pay him for them. And eventually the war's going to end, and it's a stalemate, and he's in debt, and he can't pay his bills. So all of a sudden he's got to sell more oil for many, many years than he can possibly do to begin to pay his debts, and he needs to rearm. He didn't, he had the 4th largest army in the world. Now all of a sudden he's got the 23rd largest after all this grinding down. So he's got a lot to make up for. So he then invades Kuwait. Only he didn't have permission from George Bush that time, who had succeeded Reagan. And then, of course, Gulf War One is launched. And then after that thing goes on for about 72 hours, to be generous, then what happens is all his airplanes are grounded. They won't let him fly them. But Norman Schwarzkopf, in his infinite wisdom with Bush's, agreement, let Saddam fly helicopters. And what does he do with those helicopters? Well, the George Bush, the U.S. government, CIA, State Department, encouraged Iraqis to rise up against Saddam Hussein. We'll help you. We'll back you. Don't worry. We got your back. No, we never had any intention of going into Baghdad. Let them sort it out, wink, wink. And they tried to. And because Saddam could fly over their heads, he dropped chemical weapons on them, killed over 5,000 Kurds. You can still look at the images of the bodies there. You can see the actual horrified look on the faces of the victims, capturing the moment that they died. And then to help the Kurds, we set up a no-fly zone. So after 5,000 of them have been killed, we don't allow Saddam to fly in that area. But we knew what he was going to do ahead of time. In fact, we knew that chemical weapons were going to be used against Iranians, and we didn't care. That's how moral we were. So that is the blunt truth here. And none of this has anything to do with Trump. The reason he should be especially condemned this time around is because he had nothing to do with any of the past terrible, inhumane acts America did. I just explained one of them. It's a matter of history. It's very blunt. It's true. I'm not mincing words because you don't mince words with history. You may not like the history, but you have no right to deny it or reject it. History is what happened. So in this case, we were supposedly repairing all this damage. We said when we pulled out of Iraq under Obama, and he did it only to keep a campaign promise, then predictably, as he was warned, ISIS rose up and took almost all the country, then took much of Syria, set up their caliphate. He was warned the Kurds were our best fighters. They remain the best, most loyal fighters and capable fighters in the area. They've killed more ISIS forces on the ground than, the other ones have been the Russian Air Force, the Russian military, mostly from the air. And what we do is we said, you will have your semi-autonomous region. And they asked, can we have our own country, Kurdistan? They deserve it. No, because if they had Kurdistan, Iraq would lose the northeastern part, it's a very narrow part, it's not very big, of their territory. Turkey would lose part of it in their borders, shared borders, same with Syria, and same with Iran. And it's not a big area we're talking about, especially even if they split it among the four. But neither of those four countries will tolerate a neutral or an existing Kurdistan. And they're not radical Muslims. They're one of the few sane people in the area that are not committed to a radical ideology. So yeah, let's make sure that we make sure Turkey kills them. So that's what's going on. Turkey has said they're going to set up a 200-mile across the border security zone. Translation, there'll be no Kurds there. Yeah, that's what's going on. And then they're shelling prisons that hold ISIS terrorists. Guess what those ISIS terrorists are doing when they're not ducking for cover? They're escaping. Can the Kurds be faulted for not guarding those prisons when they have to flee for their lives, being bombed by the air? No. You can't blame them. In fact, we're lucky they didn't set them free themselves, just to say, screw you, Trump. So this is what's going on. And now Trump says he's got 3 options regarding Turkey. Well, how about going in there, pushing Turkey back, teaching Turkey a lesson, telling them that if they don't like not wiping out innocent people and falsely labeling peaceful people as terrorists when they're not, they only want independence. And for the record, by the way, Israel's the only country that backs Kurdish independence. They understand the issue. They can relate to it. If we don't teach Turkey a lesson, it's over. We shouldn't kowtow to Turkey. They're not a real ally. They are a fast friend. And if Turkey doesn't like it, let them go to Russia. That's the leverage we have that Trump, in his Art of the Deal, isn't using. Because as we know from the ghostwriter of that book, the book is largely just smoke and mirrors. And that's another show, and I'm not even going to waste time on that one. Anyway, thanks for joining me. We'll come back next week. We'll talk about something very different next time unless news items dictate otherwise. Again, thanks for joining me on the X Zone Broadcast Network here. We'll see you next week.